Welcome back to Alabama Gristmill. This is our weekly podcast about history of Alabama, and glad to have everybody. Mike Causey with my co-host, Donna Causey.
Hello.
We've got, as usual, interesting little stories and tidbits pertaining to the state of Alabama, things you might not have learned in history class. I guess that's about it.
Yeah, there's always something new.
And we also like to highlight festivals that are coming up that are attached to these historical pieces and stories and elements of Alabama, so you can actually go to see the sites we're talking about, as well as enjoying a fun festival in the fall.
There's a lot of fun festivals in the fall.
Yeah, and especially with the bicentennial coming up. Or it's not the bicentennial, is it? Is that right? The bicentennial?
Yeah, bicentennial.
Yeah. Bicentennial coming up, I guess next year. They're starting a month this year, I believe, and then
There's a few things going on because some early towns were around before Alabama became a state, but Alabama became a state in December 1819. So
yep, and as usual, we always like to thank our patrons out there. We've achieved the previous goal. I guess we mentioned a couple podcasts ago. A number of patrons. We've got another one up, and goal coming up once we hit 350, we'll have sending out a free ebook to everyone. And the book, which one is that one we're sending?
It'd be the Vinegar of the Fourth Thieves. This is a crazy story, crazy title, but it's really just kind of old recipes, old ways of doing things. It's a collection of from the past. You get kind of a kick out. Some of them are really good suggestions too, because they're good for the people that like green ideas. Doing things natural.
Kind of similar to not as a farmer's almanac kind of thing,
right.
But not necessarily with the predictions and everything.
No, no
but
predictions.
As just home remedies and things like that, and different old recipes. It's kind of fun to go back, and these are actual ones that you've pulled out from your research, correct?
Right. And some of the recipes are very old too. I tell how old they are in the book too. So it'll be kind of interesting. A little bit different from other things. So
and you can always buy that book now if you wanted to. It's on Amazon. But if you're joining and you become a patron, you'll get that ebook sent out to you once we reach our goal.
Right.
So with that, let's just go ahead and get on into the story here. And we're going to talk about all the New Deal communities that were set up in the state of Alabama. Back during the FDR era.
After the Great Depression, that was so bad, it really hit Alabama hard. All
right, let's go ahead and get into it.
We were kind of lucky because we had a Senator John Bankhead Jr. at the time, who sponsored the Subsistence Homestead Program in 1933 as part of the New Deal. And because he sponsored it, we were kind of lucky because we got more than our share of agricultural assistance, thanks to his influence. And in fact, nearly a fourth of the national appropriation of those funds that were set up for the program went to a handful of farms in central Alabama. So we got lucky back then because of what he did. The New Deal was the name given the program of all kind of social economic reforms initiated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt after the Great Depression. And the Democrat-controlled Congress and other federal and state agencies sponsored these programs during the Great Depression and after it. The plan of this program was to provide impoverished people and set them up, because it would set them up on small farms in nearby rural areas, and actually establish new communities where they could live off the land or supplement their income from nearby industries. So it was a lifesaver for many people who were just destitute. The Resettlement Administration was a federal agency that was created May 1st, 1935, to locate families who were struggling due to the lack of jobs during the Great Depression. Unemployed workers usually built the houses themselves, so that gave them a job in that respect. People who managed to get some of these houses had to go through lengthy interviews, background investigation, and had to have letters of reference as well as employment records and credit checks. They didn't just hand them out willy-nilly, They really checked the people to see if they were going to be able to handle it and really take advantage of the opportunity. Many of them were former machinists or skilled artisans and professionals or workers in the service industry that had been unemployed. There were actually 8 farming communities that were established in rural Alabama. The administration built new homes, community centers, schools, stores, and they actually established a real town. They didn't just build homes and have those in it. They took care of the extra stuff that is needed to make a real town.
So they put in all the infrastructure and everything.
They did. And the people that were chosen to move to the towns could either rent it or purchase the home and farms with low government loans, low interest rate government loans. So it really was a lifesaver, as you can see, you know. And they really became good, nice little communities. There were 8 of them in Alabama that were built. And some of the areas, some of those houses still exist today. And the family members have bought it, and maybe some still in the same family that bought it originally and handed down through the years. One of them was in Trussville, Alabama. It was called the Cahaba Homestead Village. And it had a really crazy name. It was also called Slag Heap Village, if you believe it or not. That's kind of a strange name for a hometown, but it actually had that name.
Very strange name. Not really, I guess, marketing friendly. It's like, we're going to live in Slag Heap.
Well, there was a reason for it. The village was really built on land vacated by the old Trussville iron furnace. It was the slag that was left there, so the ground was not really good for farming and that kind of stuff. So they decided that they could build houses on it instead. And they did a lot of them. They built 287 residential units. They were triplexes and duplexes and single-family homes. And at first they just rented them, and then they were offered for sale in the early 1940s. The Trussville Mall in the center was designed to actually resemble the mall in Washington, D.C., and it has been listed on the National Historic Register. There's probably some homes still around now that go back to that era. And the Bankhead Farms in Jasper was another area that was built. It had 100 homesteads built there. The different projects had different type buildings according to where they were built and the spaces they were using. In the Bankhead Farms, as you can see, it's probably named after the one who got all the funds for it. It was constructed as garden homes project to relieve the uneconomical and unhealthy concentration of the industrial population in the vicinity of Jasper. Each home had a subsistence garden, which supplemented their earnings from industry. So they worked in the industry in the area, but many didn't have really good, they went back to really unhealthy shacks and all to live in. So this helped to bring up the health standards in the area. Each homestead ranged from 9 to 25 acres, and the residents came from Walker County, and several homes of the Bankhead Farms still remain. Another area that got some, a lot of them were around the area of Birmingham, it was the Gardendale or the Mount Olive, and it had 75 homesteads. The homes were constructed by using an alternative building method called rammed earth. Have you ever heard of rammed earth homes?
No, I haven't.
Well, they're kind of unusual. The houses were actually constructed with dirt taken from the site, which was mixed with red rock aggregate and tamped into wooden forms. So you actually had a dirt house. That's what many people said. But they were wired for electricity, and then there was a layer of plaster that covered the walls inside, so you couldn't see the dirt. And of course, they had floors in it, and also they looked like normal houses, but inside the walls are just rammed earth, is what they called it. The 7 original homes are still standing on Rosemary Road in the area of Mount Olive. Others may be covered with stucco or modified, so you don't know what's there, So some photographs of some of these homes can be found on the website, alabamapioneers.com. If you drive by that area, you might see some on Mount Olive, Rosemary, Springdale, and Westwood Road. They'd be interested to see. I mean, it's amazing that they've lasted that long, just being built of rammed earth. You wouldn't think they would. It was a new technique at the time, and it turned out to be very successful to last this long. And the fourth one we want to tell about is one that many people have heard of. It's G's Bend Farms in Wilcox County. I know everybody's heard of the G's Bend quilts there, or most people have hope by now, but there's a stronger history that goes way back. G's Bend was actually a plantation that was owned by the Petway family. And then the DeGraff family bought the plantation in 1895 and established an overseer for the African Americans who were living there, and they became tenant farmers at the time. But in the 1930s, they were really struggling. They were kind of cut off and isolated. They had some difficult time being out there by themselves. In the 1930s, the DeGraffs sold the land to the federal government, and they established G's Bend Farms so they could own the farms instead of being tenant farmers. And the community was still isolated for a number of years because it was enclosed on three sides by the Alabama River, and the only way you get there was by ferry, and it was kind of a really rough ferry, very unreliable. And of course, they had a muddy road to the west that you could enter it, but that would be only certain times of the year. If you got a rainy season, you had difficulty getting in there. A post office was established, and the name changed to Boykin, but area is still called G's Bend. The G's Bend community, like I said, has gained national attention for the beautiful handmade quilts that are made by the women of the community, and it's a wonderful place to visit today. It has a strong history with that, how the quilts became known all over the world. But I won't go into it all here. That's another great story. And like I said, there's a lot of pictures on the website, too, showing some of the quilts in some of the area during the 1930s. Number 5 on our list of New Deal homes was the Prairie Farms, which was established in Macon County. It was kind of a smaller one because it was the home of only 34 African-American families that had been displaced when the Tuskegee National Forest was formed. And actually, the Tuskegee National Forest is the smallest national forest in the nation. The school doubled as a community center and a site for evening and adult education and vocational classes. Once at Prairie Farms, the settlers were given a lease purchase agreement for a long-term mortgage from the U.S. government at real low interest rates so they could acquire the homes over time. And from 1944 to 1951, the government sold those farms to the private owners. And some of the people have generations of family that go back to that original settlement time. A marker can be found on 45 Tysonville Road, about 3 miles from Shorter off Highway 80. So you can find the area by looking for that historical marker. Number 6 is the Greenwood homesteads. Greenwood was an old plantation. That's where it got its name from. In the Greenwood homesteads, there were 83 of them, and it's near Bessemer. Most of those homes were brick veneer, and there are a few homes that still remain from that time. And it was a little bit smaller plots that the people had. They only had 3 acres. But today, it's located in the Bessemer city limits, about 15 miles from Birmingham city center. And the community was opened for occupancy on January 30th, 1937. This turned out to be a very successful community because out of all of the ones that were started, Greenwood's cooperative association was the only one to completely pay back the government's original loan to get it started. And another huge one was Skyline Farms in Jackson County, and it included 181 homesteads. And like some of the others, it had a school, a commissary, warehouse, a manager's office, and the people on the farms had acreage of about 40 to 60 acres. That's a lot of acreage for a farm. And they had to clear the lands, help build the farms and the homes, and plant the crops. So they really worked hard to build this community in Jackson County. The Skyline Farms were home to a thriving community of families with a co-op store, community centers, schools, and subsidized health care. And the school still remains listed on the Alabama Register of Historic Places. In fact, there were so many people that have wonderful memories of the area. They started a Skyline Farms Heritage Association. They have a website that you can reach, and you can look it up on Facebook. They connect with others that live there or grew up in that area. And the last one is Palmerdale in Jefferson County. It had 102 homesteads. It originally was named Palmer Station for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad station that served the area, and the name was changed to Palmerdale in the 1930s. There's a little side note about that, the name Palmerdale. It is said that there's a legend anyway. It said that two brothers named Palmer settled in the area just about 7 miles apart, and one brother chose the name Palmer for his property, while the second brother named his Remlap, which is Palmer spelled backwards. So that's how Remlap got its name, which is nearby. And the legend says that the brothers couldn't get along, and so they formed on their settlements. They formed two separate communities, Palmerdale and Remlap. Much of Palmerdale has now been absorbed into Pinson, just a few miles beyond Mount Pinson on the highway to Anianas, where it was originally established. Today, the citizens of Palmerdale are trying to preserve that community, and this is where we get into the festival a little bit. They have a festival every year. It was called the Alabama Butterbean Festival, which was established in 2006 as a means to raise money for the renovation of Palmerdale School, which was built in 1937 during the time of the New Deal program. This year, the festival is going to be October 5th and 6th, I think. Isn't that right?
Yeah, October 5th and 6th. And this is my favorite part of talking about these podcasts.
You can talk about
these festivals. Yeah. And I know and this one's my kind of the favorite because it's a Butterbean Festival. I mean, you can't beat a festival name or a Butterbean Festival.
How southern can you get, you know?
Yes. gotta love the Butterbeans.
Yeah, do you know how they got the name?
How they get the name of that?
Well, it said that they were sitting around trying to deliberate on name, and it was getting late into the evening, and some man stood up and said he had to get home because his wife had butter beans and cornbread that evening for him. So they said, that's the name, you know. So it turned out to be great.
Yeah, now it's the Butterbean Festival. And like you said, it's coming up October 5th and 6th here pretty soon. And you can find information about the festival at the website alabamabutterbeanfestival.com.
Right.
So I'm sure they're on Facebook.
It's claimed to be one of the largest festivals in the Southeast, so I can imagine it's going to be a crowd there. Yeah, and in 2010 they won the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest pot of baked beans. So I guess they have things other than butter beans too. Probably a lot of good cooking. There are many pictures and stories about all those towns that I mentioned on the website. So be sure and go.
Yes, I mean, especially from the G's Bend historical that everybody knows about to even the more detailed stuff about the rammed earth homes.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of pictures of how they were built, you know, from the 1930s that you can see.
We've got like for the areas, I mean, and during that, we got some old archive footage when they actually were developing that in the New Deal era.
That's true.
Using what was the work groups that did it?
The WPA.
Government? It was the WPA, coming down and doing that. Wasn't that WPA stuff?
I think
or
it
is that
Works
right?
Projects Association. I think that was under that. It's different one. You know, they had different one. Oh, the CCC. That's what we're thinking of.
That's what it was.
The CCC. The WPA did a lot of writing. That's around the state and other projects too. But
because I know we've got some good footage of the Bankhead area, the Bankhead Forest, of them developing in the state parks in the area as well, tied in with the New Deal here. And doing these communities, they also built these national forests and state parks.
Yeah, we were real lucky to have a very active senator at that time, Senator John Bankhead Jr. He was very well thought of at the time because he had a lot of influence. And I'll talk a little bit more about some other things he did later on. But the Bankhead family has a big history in the state of Alabama.
I mean, check those out. I mean, because especially the video footage we've got there it's pretty amazing to see the quality of video at the time or film at the time.
Yeah, the CCC built a lot of the state parks in Alabama. Shows them building them, so you might recognize some of them, some of the people in them.
There's even some early photos of our early film of Birmingham. That's fascinating as well to see how much the city has changed and grown over time. So
there's also some of G's Bend from the 1930s before and after the program, pictures of what it was like before and all they had to deal with and how life was for them, and then after the New Deal program came in, what life was like then. So we have a lot of good information, and look up the information on Skyline Farms too. They have a lot of stories and a history and really trying to save that history. in
So,
their
like
heritage
you say, we can find all this on the AlabamaPioneers.com website. And you support us by becoming a patron to help support this podcast and the website and all the research that we've got going on. So we really appreciate all that. And if you can't do that or don't want to do that, if you could just go out to your iTunes or your podcast apps and rate our podcast or review it, that would be great. And if you get any questions, of course, contact us through info@alabamapioneers.com or our Facebook page. You can contact us through that as well. So just let us know any feedback, any questions, things like that. We always like to hear it because we want to build a community about growing the history of Alabama.
Right. And share your if you get to the Patreon site too, share your pictures and things that you have. I'd like to get more people doing that.
Yeah.
We can collaborate there, and if you have a question, somebody else may be able to answer it. We're getting close to 300 people on there now, so that's a lot of people to collaborate with. People that love Alabama. People that
love Alabama history. And last of all is if you can't do all that, just let your friends know that it might have an interest in Alabama history, the podcast we got going here. And if they'd enjoy it and show them about how to do all that and listen to it, that'd be great. But we'll go ahead and wrap it up now. Make sure you head out to that festival, the Alabama Butterbean Festival up in Pinson. And this the weekend of the 5th and 6th, if you can, enjoy that. And I guess until next time, we'll see you later on. We'll say bye. We'll let Red Foley play us out as usual with Alabama Jubilee.
One-legged Joe dancing round on his toes, throws away his crutch and hollers, hey, let her go, oh honey.